Dear listener, as you settle into the quiet of the night, let me take you to a place where the world outside seems to pause, where the soft glow of dim lights and the gentle patter of rain against the window create a cocoon of warmth and intimacy. Picture yourself in a small, cozy bar, the kind that feels like a secret hideaway from the hustle and bustle of everyday life. The air is filled with the soft hum of conversation, the clinking of glasses, and the faint strains of a jazz tune playing in the background. I'm sitting here, alone at the bar, with a glass of whiskey in hand, watching the amber liquid swirl as I gently swirl the glass. It's a familiar ritual, one that I've come to rely on in moments like these, when the weight of the past feels heavy on my shoulders. The clock has just struck midnight, and the world outside is hushed, as if holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. You know that feeling, don't you? When the world seems to slow down, and your mind starts to wander, revisiting memories and moments that you've tucked away in the corners of your heart. That's where I am right now, dear friend. My thoughts are drifting back to a time when life felt different, when love was new and full of promise. It's a time that I haven't thought about in a while, but tonight, for some reason, it feels like the right moment to revisit it. You see, I've been carrying around a secret, a story that I've never really shared with anyone. It's a story about love, about promises made and broken, and about the search for redemption and a new beginning. It's a story that I've kept buried deep inside, afraid to let it out, afraid of the emotions it might stir up. But tonight, as I sit here in this quiet bar, I feel a strange compulsion to share it, to speak it into the stillness of the night. Maybe it's the whiskey, or maybe it's the rain, or maybe it's just the quiet of the night that makes me feel like I'm in a confessional, safe and anonymous. Whatever it is, I feel the need to let it out, to share my story with you, dear listener. So, if you're willing to listen, I'll tell you about a night that changed everything. A night when I made a promise that I would come to regret, and yet a promise that would eventually lead me to a new beginning. As I take a sip of my whiskey, I can feel the warmth spreading through me, and I close my eyes for a moment, letting the memories wash over me. I can see her face, hear her laughter, and feel the warmth of her presence. It's a feeling that I haven't experienced in a long time, and it fills me with a sense of longing and nostalgia. So, let's go back, shall we? Let's go back to a time when the world was full of possibilities, and love was the most important thing in the world. It was a summer evening, the kind where the air feels warm and alive, and the sun hangs low in the sky, casting a golden glow over everything. I was at a friend's party, a casual gathering at their house. You know the kind, my friend, where everyone seems to know everyone, and the laughter and music spill out into the street. I was standing by the makeshift bar they had set up in the kitchen, nursing a drink and trying to look like I was having a good time. Truth be told, I was feeling a bit out of place, a bit lost in the crowd. And then, she walked in. I didn't know her name then, but I remember the way she moved, the way she seemed to light up the room just by being there. I watched her as she made her way through the crowd, greeting people with a warm smile and a friendly word. She had an ease about her, a confidence that was both captivating and intimidating. I found myself drawn to her, unable to look away. And then, as if sensing my gaze, she turned and looked at me. her eyes meeting mine. There was a moment, a brief moment, where everything else seemed to fade away, and it was just the two of us. I felt a jolt of electricity, a connection that was both unexpected and exhilarating. She smiled at me, a smile that lit up her face and made my heart skip a beat. And then, she made her way over to me, and we began to talk. We talked for hours, my friend, about everything and nothing. We talked about our jobs, our families, our dreams and aspirations. We laughed, we joked, and we shared stories about our lives. It was as if we had known each other for years, as if we were old friends catching up after a long time apart. As the evening wore on, I found myself more and more drawn to her. I was captivated by her intelligence, her wit, and the warmth of personality. And then, as the party was winding down, she looked at me and said, "I have to go, but maybe we can do this again sometime?" I nodded, feeling a sense of excitement and anticipation. "I like that," I said, trying to sound casual, but inside my heart was racing, and as she left, I felt a sense of hope, a sense that something special had just begun. As the days turned into weeks, and the weeks into months, Sarah and I found ourselves spending more and more time together. It was as if we were caught in a whirlwind, a beautiful, exhilarating whirlwind that swept us off our feet and carried us along on a journey of discovery and joy. We went on dates, of course, the kind that you remember long after they've happened. There was the time we went to the local fair, the air filled with the scent of popcorn and cotton candy, and the sound of laughter and music. We rode the Ferris wheel, and as we reached the top, the city spread out below us like a sea of lights. I remember looking at her, the lights reflecting in her eyes, and feeling a sense of wonder and gratitude that she was there with me. We also spent time just hanging out, doing the simple things that couples do. We cooked dinner together, watched movies, and talked for hours about our hopes and dreams. We shared our fears and insecurities, and we supported each other through the ups and downs of life. It was a time of growth and discovery, a time when we learned more about each other and about ourselves. And then, one evening, as we were sitting on the couch, watching the sunset, Sarah turned to me and said, "I love you." It was a moment that I had been waiting for, a moment that I had dreamed of. I felt a surge of emotion, a sense of joy and fulfillment that I had never experienced before. "I love you too," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. And in that moment, I knew that I had found the person I wanted to spend the rest of my life with. It was a night like any other, or so it seemed at first. Sarah and I were at our favorite bar, a cozy little place tucked away in a corner of the city. It was the kind of place where everyone knew your name, and the bartender had your drink ready before you even sat down. The atmosphere was warm and inviting, with soft jazz playing in the background and the gentle hum of conversation filling the air. We were sitting in our usual spot, a small table by the window, watching the rain drizzle down the glass. It was a peaceful, intimate setting, the kind that makes you feel like you're the only two people in the world. We were sipping our drinks, talking about nothing in particular, when the conversation took a more serious turn. We talked about our future, about the life we wanted to build together. We talked about our dreams, our hopes, and the things we wanted to achieve. And then, Sarah looked at me and said, "Promise me that we'll always be there for each other, no matter what." I didn't hesitate, my friend. I looked into her eyes and said, "I promise." It was a promise that I meant with all my heart, a promise that I was determined to keep. And as we sat there, holding hands, I felt a sense of peace and contentment, a belief that we could face anything as long as we had each other. But as the years went by, life had a way of testing that promise, of testing our love and commitment to each other. And as I sit here now, I can't help but wonder if we were too naive, if we were too caught up in the moment to realize the challenges that lay ahead. It was a summer evening, the kind where the air feels warm and alive, and the sun hangs low in the sky, casting a golden glow over everything. I was at a friend's party, a casual gathering at their house. You know the kind, my friend, where everyone seems to know everyone, and the laughter and music spill out into the street. I was feeling a bit restless that night, a bit out of place, as if I were just going through the motions of being social without really connecting with anyone. I remember standing by the makeshift bar they had set up in the kitchen, nursing a drink and trying to look like I was having a good time. The truth was, I was feeling a bit lost, a bit disconnected from the world around me. And then she walked in. I didn't know her name then, but I remember the way she moved, the way she seemed to glide through the room, her presence lighting up the space around her. She was wearing a simple summer dress, the kind that seemed to capture the essence of the season, and her hair was pulled back in a loose ponytail. She had an ease about her, a natural grace that was both captivating and intimidating. I found myself drawn to her, unable to look away, and then, as if sensing my gaze, she turned and looked at me, her eyes meeting mine. There was a moment, a brief moment, where everything else seemed to fade away, and it was just the two of us. I felt a jolt of electricity, a connection that was both unexpected and exhilarating. She smiled at me, a smile that lit up her face and made my heart skip a beat. And then she made her way over to me, and we began to talk. "Hi," she said, her voice warm and friendly. "I'm Sarah. I don't think met before." "Hi," I replied, trying to sound casual, but inside my heart was racing. "I'm your name. It's nice to meet you." We shook hands, and I felt a warmth spread through me, a sense of excitement and anticipation. We started talking, and it was as if a switch had been flipped. The conversation flowed easily, naturally, as if we had known each other for years. We talked about everything and nothing, sharing stories about our lives, our interests, and our dreams. I found myself captivated by her, by the way she spoke, the way she laughed, and the way she seemed to understand me in a way that no one else had before. We talked for hours, the party swirling around us, but all I could focus on was her. It was as if we were in our own little world, a world where time seemed to stand still. As the evening wore on, I felt a growing sense of connection with her, a sense that this was the beginning of something special. And then, as the party was winding down, she looked at me and said, "I have to go, but maybe we can do this again sometime?" I nodded, feeling a sense of excitement and anticipation. "I'd like that," I said, trying to sound casual, but inside my heart was racing. And as she left, I felt a sense of hope, a sense that something new and exciting had just begun. Pause for a moment and think about the first time you met someone who would become important in your life. What was that moment like? How did it make you feel? Share your thoughts in the comments. As the days turned into weeks and the weeks into months, Sarah and I found ourselves spending more and more time together. It was as if we were caught in a whirlwind, a beautiful, exhilarating whirlwind that swept us off our feet and carried us along on a journey of discovery and joy. We went on dates, of course, the kind that you remember long after they've happened. There was the time we went to the local fair, the air filled with the scent of popcorn and cotton candy, and the sound of laughter and music. We rode the Ferris wheel, and as we reached the top, the city spread out below us like a sea of lights. I remember looking at her, the lights reflecting in her eyes, and feeling a sense of wonder and gratitude that she was there with me. We also spent time just hanging out, doing the simple things that couples do. We cooked dinner together, watched movies, and talked for hours about our hopes and dreams. We shared our fears and insecurities, and we supported each other through the ups and downs of life. It was a time of growth and discovery, a time when we learned more about each other and about ourselves. And then, one evening, as we were sitting on the couch, watching the sunset, Sarah turned to me and said, "I love you." It was a moment that I had been waiting for, a moment that I had dreamed of. I felt a surge of emotion, a sense of joy and fulfillment that I had never experienced before. "I love you too," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. And in that moment, I knew that I had found the person I wanted to spend the rest of my life with. Pause for a moment, and think about the moment you realized you were in love. What was that like? How did it change your relationship? Share your thoughts in the comments. It was a night like any other, or so it seemed at first. Sarah and I were at our favorite bar, a cozy little place tucked away in a corner of the city. It was the kind of place where everyone knew your name, and the bartender had your drink ready before you even sat down. The atmosphere was warm and inviting, with soft jazz playing in the background, and the gentle hum of conversation filling the air. We were sitting at our usual spot, a small table by the window, watching the rain drizzle down the glass. It was a peaceful, intimate setting, the kind that makes you feel like you're the only two people in the world. We were sipping our drinks, talking about nothing in particular, when the conversation took a more serious turn. We talked about our future, about the life we wanted to build together. We talked about dreams, our hopes, and the things we wanted to achieve. And then Sarah looked at me and said, "Promise me that we'll always be there for each other no matter what." I didn't hesitate, my friend. I looked into her eyes and said, "I promise." It was a promise that I meant with all my heart, a promise that I was determined to keep. And as we sat there, holding hands, I felt a sense of peace and contentment, a belief that we could face anything as long as we had each other. Pause for a moment and think about the promises you've made in your life. Are there any that you need to revisit or renew? Share your thoughts in the comments. As the months turned into years, the initial spark of our relationship began to settle into a comfortable routine. Sarah and I were still very much in love, but the intensity of those early days had mellowed into something deeper, something more enduring. We had built a life together, a life filled with shared memories, inside jokes, and a sense of companionship that I cherished deeply. But, as is often the case, the first signs of trouble began to appear, like tiny cracks in a once solid foundation. They started with small things, The kind of things that seem insignificant at first but slowly build up over time. Sarah and I began to argue more over trivial matters that in hindsight seem almost laughable. There was the time we argued about who forgot to buy milk, a silly disagreement that somehow escalated into a full-blown fight. There was the time we disagreed about where to go for dinner, a decision that ended with us eating separately, each of us feeling frustrated and misunderstood. And then there was the time I forgot to call her when I was running late, a simple oversight that led to a heated argument. At first, we brushed these arguments off, attributing them to the normal ups and downs of a relationship. We told ourselves that every couple goes through rough patches, and that this was just one of those times. But as the arguments became more frequent, I began to feel a sense of unease, a nagging feeling that something was wrong. I remember one particular evening, we were supposed to meet for dinner after work. I had been looking forward to it all day, eager to see her and spend some time together. But when I arrived at the restaurant, she was nowhere to be found. I tried calling her, but she didn't answer. I waited for what felt like an eternity, my head growing with each passing minute. Finally, she arrived, looking flustered and apologetic. "I'm so sorry," she said, her voice filled with regret. "Work was crazy and I lost track of time." I tried to be understanding. I really did. But in that moment I felt a surge of frustration and disappointment. "It's okay," I said, forcing a smile. "I'm just glad you're here now." But it wasn't okay. Not really. That night, as we sat across from each other, the conversation felt forced, the laughter hollow. I couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted, that we were losing the connection that had once been so strong. As the days turned into weeks, the arguments continued, and I began to notice other changes too. Sarah seemed distant, preoccupied with her own thoughts and worries. She was working longer hours, and when she was home, she seemed distant, lost in her own world. I tried to talk to her about it, to understand what was going on, but every time I brought it up, she would brush me off, saying she was fine, that it was just work stress. I wanted to believe her, I really did. But deep down, I knew there was more to it than that. Have you ever felt like you were losing someone, dear listener? Like the person you loved was slipping away, and you didn't know how to stop it? It's a terrible feeling, one that leaves you feeling helpless and alone. I began to doubt myself, to question whether I was doing something wrong. I tried to be more attentive, more supportive, but nothing seemed to work. The more I tried, the more she seemed to pull away, and so the distance between us grew, and the cracks in our relationship widened. I felt like I was standing on the edge of a precipice, watching as everything I had worked for, everything I had dreamed of, began to crumble. Pause for a moment and think about the relationships in your life. Are there any that are going through a rough patch? What can you do to help? Share your thoughts in the comments. The tension between us had been building for weeks, a slow, simmering pressure that threatened to boil over at any moment. We were like two people caught in a storm, clinging to the wreckage of what was once a beautiful relationship, desperately trying to weather the turbulent seas. It all came to a head one evening, after another long day of work and unspoken tension. I had come home, hoping for some semblance of normalcy, some sign that we could still salvage what we had. But as soon as I walked through the door, I could feel the chill in the air, the heavy silence that hung between us. Sarah was sitting on the couch, her face drawn and tired. She looked up as I entered, and I could see the weariness in her eyes, the same weariness that I felt in my bones. We stared at each other for a moment, the weight of everything that had gone unsaid hanging in the air. "We need to talk," she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. I nodded, my heart sinking. I knew what was coming, or at least I thought I did. We had been here before, teetering on the edge of a conversation either of us wanted to have. But this time felt different, more final. We sat down at the kitchen table, the same table where we had shared so many meals and conversations, and the weight of the moment settled over us like a heavy blanket. Sarah took a deep breath, and I could see the effort it took for her to find the words. "I don't know how to say this," she began, her voice trembling slightly. "But I think we need to take a break." Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. I felt a surge of emotion shock, anger, sadness, disbelief all swirling together in a maelstrom of confusion. "A break?" I repeated, my voice sounding hollow even to my own ears. "What do you mean, a break?" She looked down at her hands, her fingers twisting together nervously. "I just feel like we've been drifting apart," she said, her voice barely audible. "And I don't know how to fix it. I think we need some time apart to figure things out." Pause for a moment, and think about the moments of heartbreak in your life. How did you cope with them? What did you learn from them? Share your thoughts in the comments. The days that followed were some of the hardest of my life. The world seemed to move in slow motion, each moment stretching out interminably, filled with a dull, aching pain. I felt like I was walking through a fog. Everything around me blurred and indistinct, as if I were seeing the world through a haze of grief. I wandered through my days in a daze, going through the motions but not really living. Work became a blur, a series of tasks to be completed without any real thought or feeling. I went through the motions of my daily routine, but it all felt empty, devoid of meaning. At night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing with thoughts of Sarah and the life we had built together. I replayed our last conversation over and over in my mind, searching for clues, for signs that things might still work out. But each time, I came to the same conclusion. We were on a break, and the future was uncertain. I missed her terribly, more than I could have ever imagined. I missed her laughter, her smile, the way she would look at me and make me feel like I was the only person in the world. I missed the little things, the way she would leave me notes in the morning, the way she would curl up next to me on the couch and fall asleep in my arms. I tried to distract myself, to fill the void with other things. I threw myself into work, staying late at the office and taking on extra projects. I went out with friends, trying to lose myself in the noise and the laughter. But no matter what I did, the ache in my heart remained, a constant reminder of what I had lost. I thought about reaching out to her, about calling her or sending her a message. But every time I picked up the phone, I hesitated, unsure of what to say, afraid of making things worse. I didn't want to push her, to pressure her into something she wasn't ready for. So I waited, hoping that she would reach out to me, that she would give me some sign that she still cared. But as the days turned into weeks, and the weeks into months, the silence grew louder, and my hope began to fade. I felt like I was caught in a limbo, a state of suspended animation, waiting for something to happen, for something to change. I began to question everything. to doubt myself and my choices. I wondered if I had done something wrong, if I had missed the signs, if I could have done something to prevent this from happening. I felt a deep sense of regret, a longing to go back and do things differently. But amidst the pain and the confusion, there was a part of me that held on to hope. A part of me that believed that we could still work things out, that we could find our way back to each other. It was a small, fragile hope, but it was there, and it was enough to keep me going. Pause for a moment and think about the times when you've had to let go of something or someone you loved. How did you cope with it? What helped you move forward? Share your thoughts in the comments. As the months dragged on, I found myself at a crossroads. The pain of the breakup had settled into a dull ache, a constant companion that I had learned to live with. But the uncertainty, the not knowing what the future held, was becoming unbearable. I needed closure, needed to understand what had gone wrong, and whether there was any chance of us finding our way back to each other. I spent countless nights lying awake, wrestling with the decision of whether to reach out to Sarah. Part of me was terrified of rejection, of hearing her say that it was truly over. But another part of me, a part that was growing stronger with each passing day, knew that I needed to try, that I needed to know one way or the other. Finally, after much deliberation, I decided to write her a letter. It felt like the right approach, a way to express my feelings without the pressure of a face-to-face conversation. I sat down at my desk, took a deep breath, and began to write. "Dear Sarah," I started, my hand trembling slightly as I wrote. "I hope this letter finds you well. I know it's been a while since we last spoke, and I want to reach out and see how you were doing." I paused for a moment, gathering my thoughts. I've been doing a lot of thinking lately, about us, about what happened, and about what I want moving forward. I know things ended badly between us, and I've spent a lot of time blaming myself, wondering what I could have done differently. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my nerves. But I've come to realize that maybe it wasn't just me, that maybe there were things we both could have done differently. And I guess what I'm trying to say is that I miss you. I miss what had, and I wonder if there's any chance we could try again. I poured my heart out in that letter, expressing my feelings of regret, my hopes for the future, and my desire to make things right. When I finished, I read it over several times, making sure that it conveyed everything I wanted to say. Then, with a sense of trepidation, I sealed the letter in an envelope and mailed it off, hoping that it would find its way to her, and that she would read it with an open heart. Pause for a moment and think about the times when you've had to reach out to someone after a period of silence. How did it feel? What was the outcome? Share your thoughts in the comments. The day of our meeting arrived, and I found myself a bundle of nerves. I had spent the morning pacing around my apartment, rehearsing what I wanted to say, trying to anticipate how the conversation might go. But no matter how much I prepared, I knew that there was no way to predict how things would unfold. I arrived at the cafe early, choosing a quiet corner table where we could talk without being overheard. I ordered a coffee, hoping the caffeine would calm my nerves, but my hands were still shaking as I lifted the cup to my lips. As I sat there, waiting, my mind raced with thoughts and memories. I thought about the last time we had seen each other, the pain and confusion of that night, and the months of silence that had followed. I wondered what she would say, how she would look, whether there was any chance of us finding our way back to each other. And then I saw her. She walked through the door, her eyes scanning the room until they landed on me. My heart skipped a beat as our eyes met, and I felt a rush of emotions: relief, anxiety, hope, and a deep, abiding love. She smiled tentatively as she approached the table, and I stood up to greet her, my heart pounding in my chest. "Hi," she said, her voice soft and uncertain. "Hi," I replied, my own voice barely above a whisper. We stood there for a moment, looking at each other, the weight of everything that had happened hanging in the air between us. And then she stepped forward and hugged me, and I felt a sense of warmth and familiarity wash over me. We sat down at the table, and for a moment there was an awkward silence as we both gathered our thoughts. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my nerves, and decided to start with something simple. "How have you been?" I asked, my voice tentative. She shrugged, a small, sad smile playing at the corners of her mouth. "I've been okay," she said. "It's been a tough few months, but I'm getting by." I nodded, understanding. "Yeah, it's been hard for me too," I admitted. "I miss you." Her eyes softened, and I saw a glimmer of the old Sarah, the one I had fallen in love with. "I miss you too," she said, her voice barely audible. We talked for hours, the conversation ranging from the mundane to the deeply personal. We talked about what had happened, the reasons for the breakup, and the things we had both learned in the months since. We talked about our fears, our hopes, and the possibility of finding our way back to each other. It wasn't easy, and there were moments of tension and tears, but through it all there was a sense of honesty and openness that we hadn't had before. We both acknowledged our mistakes, the things we had done wrong, and the ways in which we had hurt each other. And as we talked, I felt a sense of hope growing inside me, a hope that maybe, just maybe, we could work things out. I knew that it wouldn't be easy, that we would have to be patient and work hard to rebuild the trust and the connection that we had lost. But as we left the cafe that afternoon, I felt a renewed sense of purpose, a determination to make things right. I knew that the road ahead would be difficult, but I was willing to do whatever it took to make our relationship work. Pause for a moment and think about the times when you've had to confront difficult conversations. How did you handle them? What did you learn from them? Share your thoughts in the comments. As we continued to talk, the conversation eventually turned to the promise we had made that night at the bar. The promise that had been weighing on my mind for so long. I took a deep breath, gathering my courage, and decided to bring it up. "Do you remember that night at the bar?" I asked, my voice tentative. "The night we made that promise to each other?" Sarah looked at me, her eyes searching mine, and I could see the memories flickering behind her gaze. "Of course I do," she said softly. "How could I forget?" I nodded, feeling a sense of relief that she remembered. "I've been thinking about that promise a lot lately," I admitted. "About what it meant, and whether we can still honor it." She was quiet for a moment, her expression thoughtful. "I think about it too," she said finally. "I think about the things we promised each other, and how far we've drifted from them." I felt a pang of guilt, knowing that I had played a part in that drift. "I've made mistakes," I said, my voice filled with regret. "I've let you down, and I've let myself down, but I want to make it right. I want to try to honor that promise, if you'll let me." Sarah was silent for a moment, her eyes downcast. I could see the conflict in her expression, the struggle to reconcile the past with the present. "I want to believe that we," she said finally, "but it's hard. We've both hurt each other, and I'm not sure if we can get back to the way things were." I nodded, understanding her hesitation. "I know it's not going to be easy," I said, "and I don't expect things to go back to the way they were overnight. But I believe that we can build something new, something stronger. We just have to be willing to try." She looked at me then, her eyes filled with a mixture of hope and uncertainty. "I want to try," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "But we have to be honest with each other, and we have to be patient. We have to be willing to work through the hard stuff." "I agree," I said, my voice filled with determination. "And I'm willing to do whatever it takes. I want to make this work more than anything." We talked for a while longer, discussing the steps we needed to take to rebuild our relationship. We agreed to take things slow, to communicate openly and honestly, and to be patient with each other as we worked through our issues. It wasn't a perfect conversation, and there were still many questions left unanswered. But as we left the cafe that day, I felt a renewed sense of hope, a belief that we could find our way back to each other. Pause for a moment and think about the promises you've made in your life. Are there any that you need to revisit or renew? Share your thoughts in the comments. As we continued to meet and talk, the conversations became deeper and more introspective. We began to explore the regrets we both harbored, the things we wished we had done differently, and the ways in which we had hurt each other. It was a difficult process, one that required a lot of vulnerability and honesty. But as we shared our regrets, I felt a sense of relief, a release of the burden that I had been carrying for so long. It was as if, by acknowledging our mistakes and sharing our pain, we were able to let go of some of the hurt and move forward. I told Sarah about the times I had taken her for granted, the moments I had been insensitive or unkind. I confessed that there were times when I had prioritized my own needs and desires over hers, and that I regretted not being more attentive and supportive. She listened quietly, her eyes filled with understanding and compassion, and then she shared her own regrets, the ways in which she felt she had failed me, the moments when she had been distant or unresponsive. We talked about the arguments we had had, the misunderstandings that had driven us apart. We acknowledged the role we both played in the breakdown of our relationship, and we expressed our remorse for the pain we had caused each other. It was a cathartic experience, one that allowed us to see each other in a new light. We realized that we were both flawed, that we had both made mistakes, but that we were also both willing to learn and grow from those mistakes. As we shared our regrets, we also began to see the ways in which we had grown and changed since the breakup. We had both been through a lot, and we had both come out the other side stronger and more self-aware. I realized that I had learned to be more patient, more understanding, and more willing to communicate openly and honestly. Sarah, in turn, had learned to be more assertive, more willing to express her needs and desires, and more open to compromise. We talked about the ways in which we had changed, and the ways in which we hoped to continue to grow. We agreed that our relationship would be different this time, that we would be more mindful of each other's needs, and more committed to working through our issues. It was a powerful realization, one that filled me with hope and optimism for the future. I felt like we were on the cusp of something new, something better, and I was determined to make the most of it. Pause for a moment and think about the regrets you have in your life. What have you learned from them? How have they shaped you? Share your thoughts in the comments. As the weeks passed, our conversations grew more frequent and more meaningful. We met regularly, sometimes at the same cafe where we had first reconnected, other times at parks or quiet corners of the city where we could talk without interruption. Each meeting felt like a step forward, a step towards rebuilding the connection we had once shared. And then, one evening, as we were sitting on a park bench watching the sun set, Sarah turned to me and said, "I've been thinking a lot about us, about what we want and where we're going." I nodded, my heart pounding in my chest. I had been thinking about the same thing, hoping that she was feeling the same way I was. "Me too," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. She took a deep breath, and I could see the uncertainty in her eyes, the fear of taking a leap of faith. "I think I want to try again," she said finally, her voice filled with a quiet determination. "I want to see if we can make this work." Her words filled me with a sense of relief and joy, a feeling that I hadn't experienced in a long time. "I want that too," I said, my voice filled with sincerity. More than anything, we sat there for a moment, looking at each other, the weight of our decisions settling over us. It was a big step, one that required a lot of trust and commitment, but as we looked into each other's eyes, I felt a sense of certainty, a belief that we could make it work this time. We talked about the steps we needed to take to make it work, the things we needed to do differently. We agreed to be more open and honest with each other, to communicate our needs and feelings more clearly. We also agreed to be more patient and understanding, to give each other the space and support we needed to grow. We talked about the challenges we might face, the obstacles that lay ahead. But instead of feeling daunted, we felt determined, ready to face whatever came our way. We knew that it wouldn't be easy, but we were willing to put in the effort, to work through the hard times and celebrate the good times. Pause for a moment and think about the times when you've taken a leap of faith. What was the outcome? What did you learn from the experience? Share your thoughts in the comments. With our decision to try again firmly in place, Sarah and I embarked on the challenging but rewarding journey of rebuilding our relationship. It was a process that required patience, understanding, and a willingness to grow and change together. We started by setting some ground rules for our relationship. We agreed to prioritize communication, to make it a point to talk openly and honestly about our feelings, our needs, and our concerns. We also agreed to be more mindful of each other's boundaries, to respect each other's space and individuality. One of the first things we did was to establish a weekly check-in, where we would sit down and talk about how we were feeling, what was going well, and what we needed to work on. It was a structured way to ensure that we were staying connected and addressing any issues before they could grow into bigger problems. During these check-ins, we talked about everything from the mundane details of our daily lives to the deeper emotional issues that we were grappling with. We shared our successes and our struggles, and we offered each other support and encouragement. We also made a conscious effort to spend more quality time together. We planned regular date nights where we would try new restaurants, go to the movies, or simply stay in and cook dinner together. We also made time for activities that we both enjoyed, like hiking, visiting museums, or just taking long walks in the park. In addition to spending time together, We also made an effort to support each other's individual interests and pursuits. Sarah had always been passionate about painting, and I encouraged her to take a class and devote more time to her art. In turn, she supported my interest in writing, and we often shared our work with each other, offering feedback and encouragement. As we worked on rebuilding our relationship, we also focused on personal growth. We both recognized that we needed to work on ourselves in order to be the best partners we could be. I started seeing a therapist to work on my issues with anxiety and self-doubt, while Sarah focused on developing her assertiveness and communication skills. It wasn't always easy, and there were times when we stumbled and had to pick ourselves up and start again. But through it all, we remained committed to each other and to the process of rebuilding our relationship. We learned to be more forgiving, both of each other and of ourselves. We recognized that we were both human, that we would make mistakes, and that the important thing was to learn from them and move forward. As the months passed, I began to feel a renewed sense of hope and optimism. I felt like we were finally on the right track, that we were building a stronger, more resilient relationship than the one we had before. Pause for a moment and think about the ways in which you are growing and changing. What are you working on? What are your goals for personal growth? Share your thoughts in the comments. As we continued to rebuild our relationship, we faced a number of challenges that tested our resolve and commitment. It was as if life was throwing everything it had at us, trying to see if we were truly serious about making things work this time. One of the biggest challenges we faced was learning to trust each other again. After the hurt and betrayal of the past, rebuilding trust was not an easy task. There were times when I found myself questioning Sarah's actions, wondering if she was being completely honest with me. And I knew that she had her own doubts and insecurities about me as well. We talked about these feelings openly, acknowledging that they were a natural part of the healing process. We agreed to be patient with each other, to give each other the space and time we needed to rebuild trust. We also made a conscious effort to be more transparent, to share our thoughts and feelings more openly, and to keep our promises. Another challenge we faced was learning to communicate more effectively. Both had our own communication styles, and sometimes these styles clashed. There were times when we misunderstood each other, when our words were misinterpreted or taken out of context. To address this, we made a concerted effort to listen more actively, to ask questions, and to clarify our understanding before responding. We also learned to be more mindful of our tone and body language, to ensure that our messages were being conveyed in a way that was clear and respectful. We also faced external pressures, such as work stress, family obligations, and the general chaos of everyday life. There were times when these pressures threatened to overwhelm us, when we felt like we were being pulled in different directions. To manage these pressures, we made a point to prioritize our relationship, to carve out time for each other even when life got busy. We also learned to lean on each other for support, to share our burdens and work through our challenges together. Pause for a moment and think about the challenges you are currently facing in your life. How are you dealing with them? What support do you need? Share your thoughts in the comments. After months of hard work and dedication, Sarah and I reached a turning point in our relationship. It was a moment that solidified our commitment to each other and reaffirmed our belief that we were on the right path. The turning point came during a weekend getaway that we had planned as a way to reconnect and recharge. We had chosen a quaint little cabin in the mountains, a place that promised peace and tranquility, away from the hustle and bustle of everyday life. As we arrived at the cabin, I felt a sense of anticipation and excitement. It was a beautiful place, surrounded by towering trees and the sound of a nearby stream. We spent the first day exploring the area, hiking through the woods and enjoying the crisp mountain air. That evening, as we sat on the porch watching the sunset, Sarah turned to me and said, "I've been thinking a lot about us, about where we are and where we're going." I nodded, feeling a sense of calm and contentment. "Me too," I said. "I feel like we're finally in a good place." She smiled, a warm, genuine smile that lit up her face. "I agree," she said. "I feel like we've come so far, and I'm really proud of us." We talked for a while, reflecting on the journey we had been on, the challenges we had faced, and the progress we had made. We talked about the things we had learned about each other and about ourselves, and the ways in which we had grown and changed. And then Sarah took my hand and looked into my eyes. "I love you," she said, her voice filled with sincerity. "And I'm so grateful that we decided to give this another chance." Her words filled me with a sense of warmth and joy, a feeling that I hadn't experienced in a long time. "I love you too," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "And I'm grateful too. I can't imagine my life without you." We sat there for a while, holding hands and watching the stars come out, feeling a deep sense of connection and contentment. It was a moment of pure, unadulterated happiness, a moment that I knew I would cherish forever. In that moment, I realized that we had reached a turning point. We had come through the storm and emerged stronger, more resilient, and more in love than ever before. We had learned to trust each other again, to communicate openly and honestly, and to support each other through thick and thin. It was a turning point that marked a new beginning for us, a fresh start on the next chapter of our journey together. And as we sat there, wrapped up in each other's arms, I felt a sense of hope and optimism for the future, a belief that we could overcome anything as long as we had each other. Pause for a moment and think about the turning points in your life. What were they? How did they change you? Share your thoughts in the comments. In the weeks and months that followed our turning point, Sarah and I continued to grow and strengthen our relationship. We had reached a place of stability and contentment, a place where we felt secure in our love for each other and confident in our ability to face whatever challenges lay ahead. One of the things that helped us reach this place was our willingness to accept the past and learn from it. We both recognized that our past experiences, both good and bad, had shaped us into the people we were today. And rather than trying to forget or deny the past, we chose to embrace it, to learn from it, and to use it as a foundation for our future. We talked openly about the mistakes we had made, the things we regretted, and the ways in which we had hurt each other. We acknowledged that we were both human, that we had both made mistakes, and that we had both learned and grown from those experiences. By accepting the past, we were able to let go of the resentment and bitterness that had been holding us back. We were able to forgive each other, not just with words, but with our hearts. And in doing so, we were able to move forward with a sense of peace and clarity. We also learned to appreciate the lessons that the past had taught us, We realized that our struggles and challenges had made us stronger, more resilient, and more compassionate. We had learned the importance of communication, of trust, and of mutual respect. And we had learned that love is not just a feeling, but a choice. A commitment to work through the hard times and celebrate the good times. Pause for a moment and think about the ways in which you are embracing the present and preparing for the future. What are your goals? What steps are you taking to achieve them? Share your thoughts in the comments. With the past behind us and a renewed sense of hope and optimism, Sarah and I embarked on a new beginning in our relationship. It was a fresh start, a chance to build a future together based on the lessons we had learned and the love that had brought us back together. We approached this new beginning with a sense of excitement and possibility. We were both committed to making our relationship work, to nurturing it and helping it grow. We knew that it wouldn't always be easy, but we were determined to face whatever challenges came our way with open hearts and minds. One of the first things we did was to set some goals for our relationship. We talked about what we wanted to achieve together, both in the short term and the long term. We set goals for our personal growth, for our shared experiences, and for our future as a couple. We also made a conscious effort to continue prioritizing communication and trust. We knew that these were the cornerstones of a strong and healthy relationship, and we were committed to nurturing them. We established regular check-ins where we would talk about our feelings, our needs, and any issues that needed to be addressed. In addition to communication and trust, we also focused on building a strong foundation of mutual respect and support. We made it a point to celebrate each other's successes, to encourage each other in our pursuits, and to be there for each other in times of need. We also made an effort to create new memories together, to explore new places, and to try new things. We went on adventures, both big and small, and we cherished the time we spent together. We learned to appreciate the simple pleasures of life, like cooking dinner together, watching a movie, or just sitting on the couch and talking. As we built our new beginning, we also focused on personal growth and development. We both recognized that in order to be the best partners we could be, we needed to continue working on ourselves. We encouraged each other to pursue our passions, to learn new skills, and to grow as individuals. We also made a point to give back to our community, to volunteer our time and resources to causes that we cared about. We believed that by helping others, we were also helping ourselves, and that it was important to contribute to the world in a positive way. Through it all, we remained committed to each other and to the journey we were on. We knew that life would have its ups and downs, but we were determined to face it all together, with love, compassion, and a sense of humor. Pause for a moment and think about the new beginnings in your life. What are they? How are you approaching them? Share your thoughts in the comments. As I sit here now, reflecting on the journey that Sarah and I have been on, I can't help but feel a deep sense of gratitude and contentment. It's been a long road, filled with challenges and triumphs, heartache and joy. But through it all, we've emerged stronger, more in love, and more committed to each other than ever before. Looking back, I realize that the key to our success has been our willingness to grow and change together. We've learned to communicate openly and honestly, to trust each other implicitly, and to support each other through thick and thin. We've also learned to be patient, to forgive, and to appreciate the small moments that make life so beautiful. Our journey hasn't been perfect, and there have been times when we've stumbled and fallen. But we've always picked ourselves up, dusted ourselves off, and continued on, determined to make things work. We've learned that love is not just a feeling, but a choice, a commitment to work through the hard times and celebrate the good times. And now, as we stand on the brink of a new chapter in our lives, I feel a sense of excitement and anticipation for what lies ahead. We have big plans, dreams that we're working towards, and a future that we're building together. But more than that, I feel a deep sense of peace, knowing that whatever happens, we'll face it together. I think about the lessons we've learned, the growth we've experienced, and the love that has brought us back together. I think about the promises we've made, not just to each other, but to ourselves, to be the best versions of ourselves that we can be. And I feel a profound sense of gratitude for the second chance we've been given. As I sit here, watching the rain fall gently outside, I realize that love is a journey that we're still on, and I wouldn't have it any other way. I'm grateful for every moment, every challenge, and every triumph. I'm grateful for the love that we share and for the life that we're building. And so, dear listener, as this story comes to a close, I want to leave you with thought. Love is a journey, not a destination. It's a journey filled with ups and downs, twists and turns, but it's a journey worth taking. Embrace it, cherish it, and never take it for granted. Thank you for joining me on this journey, for listening to my story, and for being a part of this moment. I hope that in some small way, my story has brought you comfort, hope, and a sense of peace. And I hope that it has reminded you of the power of love, the strength of the human spirit, and the beauty of second chances. Good night, dear listener. May your dreams be filled with love and light.